What is healing? We are coming together here, Andrew and I, from two different lineages, and want to talk about healing. Healing is a word that is used so often in spiritual traditions, in the psychological world, in our Western world, and many of us actually don't really know what healing means. So let's get into that a little bit, Andrew. And hi, Andrew.
Hiya, good to be here.
Just a little bit about how we want to frame our talk today. So, we would like to express our different lenses that we come from,
Mm.
and then we want to go into the actual practice of healing, of daily healing. How can we bring it into our day-to-day lives, but also how can we approach it in safe spaces, in breathwork or expanded states of awareness and consciousness, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So maybe I just can paint a little overview of what I would like to talk after about. So I come out of a cosmovision, a shamanic cosmovision, and we work like many of the ancient traditions with three different worlds that we have access to. So there is the middle world. Let's start with the middle world. And the middle world is our world of the body, of the emotions, and of our rational mind, that what we perceive as awareness and conscious living in the day-to-day life. Then we have the underworld, like my shamanic teachers talked about. So the underworld is the subconscious mind. It's the cellular mind that we have. It's our memory of our ancestors and our lineages. And this is accessible also in expanded states of consciousness, because there is a mind in there as well. We don't have only the conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind. And then there is the upper world, the so-called upper world in my traditions. And the upper world can also be talked about or named as superconscious mind or higher self. And when we bring those two minds or those two worlds together, we walk the path of the heart of our center and the path of wholeness and freedom. And I would like to invite you, Andrew, from your cosmovision, from your teachings, to talk a little bit. What is healing? Talk to us.
Yeah, I feel like I'd like to start off by talking about the similarities, between our two ways of looking at the world. So for me, healing is about wholeness. It's about coming into the full possibility of who we are. Okay. And I look at things from a more, I guess, from a more Western perspective, but very much influenced by my background as a Buddhist, so there's that spiritual element as well. So Buddhism teaches that we're born, as pure souls, we're born as who we are. And then we have experiences, which may take us away from that fullness of who we are. Um, and I've worked with, as you know, I've worked a lot with Gabor Mate in my training. He talks a lot about trauma and, how we have experiences where we don't receive what we needed. We don't get enough love. We don't get enough attention. We aren't seen. We aren't attuned to by our caregivers. And our response to that as children, okay, is to adapt. And when we adapt, we often shut down parts of who we are. So, for instance, we might be very creative. We might be very musical. We might paint, but that might not serve us in our environment. So we shut that down. We might be very expressive with our voice, but need to be quiet. We might be very, yeah, it could be anything that, and the other thing that happens often is that we become restricted in our bodies. So our nervous system adapts to our environment as well. So we can shut down. We can be very sleepy, rather than act. or we can be in overdrive all the time and just having to work and be productive. And we learn these things as children, and we get to adulthood, and these things no longer serve us because we're not, we're not children anymore. We're not in a family, but we carry on these adaptations. So my version of what you're talking about is, these expanded, states of consciousness that we can find through breath work and our plant allies, means that we can access the fullness of who we are. As we go about in our day-to-day lives, we spend most of our times in our mind, in our prefrontal cortex. That's how society's set up for us to work, to think, to plan. And we can move away from that, and we can see what's actually available, who we are, not just for ourselves, but for our ancestors. And we can have access to that. Okay. And as we have access to that, we often have, there's a need to experience what we couldn't experience when we were children, the sadness, the anger, as we move through, move through to find, to reclaim who we are. We need to go through, you might need to go through grief, through anger, through fear. So yeah, I think we're describing the same thing, but from slightly different perspectives. For me, it's very much reclaiming our birthright. Yeah. Not just our birthright, but our ancestors' birthright as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talk actually about sovereignty a lot. I know you didn't use the word,
I
but
didn't use the word, no, but that's
that
what came up for you, right? Yeah.
yeah, that came up for me, and to um, bring all these parts that we lost
Mm.
back into ourselves and back to ourselves, to be able to express the full being that we are.
Yeah.
And how I see it as the middle world, upper world, and lower world, to combine all these words together, and not only to live out one little part of us, to
Yeah.
live in our day-to-day lives only in the middle world, or as you say, in the mind, only this part. We act out in the Western world very, very often, and we forget about our deep, deep subconscious, and we forget about the superconscious
Yeah.
very, very often.
Yeah.
And that sometimes makes me or I can feel a lot of grief around that, and collective grief as well. I can feel it moving through me, this need to come back into our human power. And I don't mean the power over, but I mean the
Yeah.
power with others, the power with other beings, like other humans or plants or elements, what we have forgotten, mainly in the Western world, or we are in Europe, we have forgotten our roots and the power of
Yeah.
connection.
And I feel like I want to say something about that that's just occurring to me as you're speaking. And for me, something happens when we expand individually. Okay, when we come into the fullness of who we are, something happens automatically where we're connecting with the world around us. Okay, it's inevitable. It's a part of that expansion is to, it's not an individual journey. We suddenly are able to connect with the world around us in a very different way. And for me, there's a feeling of moving out into the world rather than in, if that makes any sense to you.
Oh, yeah. Would you say that sometimes it needs to go inward before it can
Yeah,
go outwards?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so once we heal as individuals, there's a natural. It's like it feels like a natural law of expansion in outwards. Okay, and I think that's what we're doing in the Freedom Tribe, right? We're healing individually, but as we do that, we're taking it out. there's a feeling I need to take it out into the world. I don't want to just keep this for myself. This, this wonderful experience of life and coming into my heart and feeling, you know, what feels natural and normal to, yeah. I don't know if I'm making sense now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I was just listening to you, but also a word came in, or a beautiful expression of one of my teachers who calls that the path of the heart.
Yeah,
And the heart is actually the center of all the three words together, the worlds together. And when we walk the path of the heart, we are automatically connected to everything. And
yeah,
only ourselves and our little egos and our little lives and stories and everything that we have experienced, which might be really hard and really traumatic and also really beautiful sometimes, of course, like life
yeah.
is. But um, to come back into wholeness and to make a step towards freedom and another step towards freedom, automatically we want to open our hearts and we are not afraid to go into our hearts any longer.
Yeah,
Because there is so much fear that I see around in many, many of our beautiful human friends around the world, to actually drop into the heart because there is so much pain in there and so much memory in there.
yeah,
And that's the individual healing, I guess, that you were talking about before, what we do in the Freedom Tribe, that it's very, very important first to tend to the personal healing,
yes,
because then we can relate to the world around us and to other humans, to animals, to plants, to the elements, to the stars, to the earth in a different way.
yeah. There's something for me about having to face our own shadow, in order to move through to that place of expanded collective healing, right?
Yeah.
As individuals, we have to face up to our own shadow and the collective shadow as well.
And
Ultimately,
sometimes they overlap
yes.
because I'm right now in a phase where I experience my own shadows in a connection with the collective shadow. So
Mm,
sometimes you can't even tell in the beginning when something comes up, or comes up into your consciousness. Is it mine, or is it of the collective, or is it from someone else? Because we are all interlinked and interconnected, right?
well connected.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that is hard sometimes, but it can be also really, really beautiful because it emphasizes empathy and we don't feel alone anymore because we are not going through all these emotions, uh, only us. There are so many of us who go through same and similar experiences.
yeah. Should we talk a little bit about day-to-day practical reality of how do we do this? We're talking about healing and what it means, but how do we do this? Well, first of all, how do we do this in the freedom? How do we facilitate this in the Freedom Tribe? And then how can we do this in our daily lives? Um, so we offer breath work, which is a beautiful. We call it, don't we? We call it the medicine of the chest, of the breath. Is here, right here in our bodies. We can use our breath to consciously expand our awareness, you know, in a different way than we experience reality on a day-to-day basis. We can have access to some of these transpersonal worlds that you talked about. But not only that, we can access our own hidden material, our shadow, experiences that we've kept hidden away that we need to re-experience, to reintegrate. Um, yeah. And then I guess during day-to-day life, we remember these experiences. We bring self-kindness, compassion to ourselves, as much kindness as we can muster. Um, yeah, and we sit with these experiences and we remember them and we honor them in whatever way makes sense. It might be journaling, it might be painting, it might be dancing, it might be moving our body, it might be um, what else can you think of, Sandra?
Yeah, what came up now is the community aspect
Okay.
because,
Yeah.
you know, we can do breath work. We can do it on our own, of course, like the shorter breath work sessions, the 15 to 20 minutes that sometimes we offer as well. But bigger experiences, they need to be held by someone who knows how to create and hold a safe space.
Yeah.
So, and that is possible online. And of course, it is uh, wonderful if we can be in the same room also together, to be held, actually held, physically held by someone else. And that is what we do in our retreats, right?
Yeah.
And we have had so many life-changing experiences that were completely unexpected to the participants,
Mm.
going into their integration phases and realizing, oh, it was not only the experience that I had that was transformative in the moment, but then I could bring something into my life that I didn't, or I let go of something that I thought before I can't let go of because I was afraid, or it was just part of my life. I didn't know how to live without that. Or they could bring in something also that was
Yeah.
unexpected.
Yeah. And you've touched on a really important point, Sandra, which is that for me, healing happens in relationship. It doesn't happen on our own, sitting in a room doing our own thing. It happens with another, at least one other. You know, the more people there, the better for that sort of energy, right? That energy of healing.
Yeah.
Because we're not, you know, we're our nervous systems are wired to connect to each other.
Yeah.
You know, that's how we are as human beings. You know, um,
And
we're
I think,
we're social creatures, right?
yeah, yeah, we are social creatures, absolutely. And we are so used to sit alone in our room or go to work and then go home, and not really interact with an open and vulnerable heart with others, because very, very often we are judged, or we feel that we need to put a mask on to be loved and to be cared for, or and therefore non-judgmental and safe spaces are so important,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
everyone is seen as they are, and there is no hierarchy, and there is no better or worse. It's just an expression of human life, and it's seen and loved and heard exactly as it is.
yeah,
And that is so important for me in the
yeah. And you've just
journey.
you touched on something that just came in for me about what we're doing in the Freedom Tribe, and that is one. I think one of our core values, right, is to create spaces where people can just be
Yeah,
everything they are, you know, without any judgment, without any, they can just be accepted.
yeah,
They can just come and rest and be as they are.
yeah. Yeah, just be,
Just
finally.
be. Yeah.
And uh, I have had an experience, if I might share, where for the first time I felt safe to cry in front of others and not feel ashamed.
Mm,
And that was one of the most healing experiences that I ever had, you know?
mm,
Uh, and that was only possible in a safe space.
yeah. So maybe healing is not just about coming to wholeness, but it's about moving through shame and that feeling of not being good enough. And, you know, and as we reclaim our birthright, we're actually reclaiming that our birthright as human beings, just to be as we are, without any, oh, I've done something wrong, or I should be a different way, or, you know.
Yeah. And one thing that I also want to name is that there is no pressure in the healing, on the healing path. Because I thought for very long, oh yeah, now I'm on the path and I put so much pressure on myself to heal this shadow and to go into the next thing. And, in the next 2 weeks, I need to heal this and this.
Mm,
And it's just not our soul's path. So to relax into that unique soul path.
mm.
I feel is so important
Yeah,
because we are all unique expression of one conscious spirit, you know. And we all have the right to heal in our own timeline because in
yeah,
the supermind, time does not exist. Only in the middle world, you know, time exists. In the other worlds, time does not exist.
yeah,
So maybe this is also something important to name because there is so much pressure on healing, 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 you know, but no,
yeah.
let it
Yeah,
come.
I guess it's this Western productive mindset can come into the whole healing space, right? Oh, we need to do X, Y, and Z by this timeline, and yeah,
Yeah. And at the same time, it needs boldness and courage.
and intention.
Yes, and intention to step into it and repetitively do the work.
Yeah.
Because I have seen that the repetition is really important.
Mm.
And not only to go on one retreat and to think, okay, I come home and I'm healed. No, it's a day-to-day practice, a loving, compassionate practice, a day-to-day practice, and that we can do with others. And therefore, community is so important to
Mm.
keep us accountable, but also to remind us of a little bit of ease.
Yeah. A little bit of softness, a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is there anything else that you want to express in this moment?
No, I'm just feeling so much gratitude for, I think for everyone that I've met along this healing journey. Um, and that just that these medicines are available, especially the breath. We don't have to go anywhere. It's just here. We don't have to do anything special. It's just this breath is just here for us to help us. Um, so I think I want to leave with gratitude. That's what I'd like to end on. What about you, Sandra?
I'm grateful for you that we met each
Ah,
other.
thank you.
And that we can express this to our participants, you know, and we can hold the space in a safe way. And that feels like it feels like just so magical to hold others on their path, but also to hold each other in our team on
Yeah,
our own individual healing
I,
path.
I love the word magical.
Mm.
Should we end on the word magical? Because that feels right to me.
So gratitude and magic.
Magical, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you everyone who stayed until the end. And I hope we will see you in one of our next online breathworks or in a retreat. And I put the link below where you can find us. So
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone.
thank you for listening,
Thank
and
you, Sandra.
thank you, Andrew, and see you next time here on YouTube. Lots of love to everyone.
Lots of love.